Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and allow me to explain very quickly before we get started why this isn't the weekly reset. It's because the weekly reset was written and recorded and in the latter stages of editing, all ready for release long before this video will go live, and then someone, can't remember who, made an accidental press on Control-Z in the wrong folder and unmade all of our video footage so that it literally doesn't exist anymore and couldn't be recovered. That's a genuine feature of Windows, believe it or not, and I'm really sorry, but obviously there was no way that we could re-record all of our to-camera stuff and the intro skit and get the video out and still call it a news show rather than a history show, which is a real shame because Evertel's segment this week was especially funny, and I'm not just saying that, it's the internet's loss. But my segment was a little less news reporting and more a reflection on a couple of potential problems that I've noticed in the last week or so with Torghast. So I'm re-recording it essentially as a Taliesin Talks, and we'll be putting it to some very simple, probably unedited footage. It's not ideal, I'm a bit ashamed of it, but here it is. It's been a stressful couple of days. I've now removed the Control and Z buttons from my keyboard, you'll be pleased to know. But it's fair to say that Shadowlands alpha updates and WoW news has been bitty the last couple of weeks anyway. Wowhead put out a post charting the IRL heights of different NPC characters by their in-game model size. And look, I'm not saying that's not a super interesting and fun thing to do, okay? Because it definitely is. Apparently most of them hover between the 7 and 11 foot mark, which, okay, yeah, that's terrifying. Like seriously, the one with the height closest to mine at 6'3" is Magni, which still upsets me to think about. And that's a good article. Well done, Wowhead. Link in the description below. All I'm saying is that's not the kind of article you put out when the exciting Alpha Fun Times tap is turned all the way up and flowing freely, you know? That's all I'm saying. In fact, for the second week in a row, the most substantial addition to the Alpha was the enabling of new classes for testing in Torghast, the Tower of the Damned, and it was playing these new classes, and one in particular, that inspired this segment today, because we are gradually learning more and more about this central feature of Shadowlands and refining our opinions more on how the game mode should be implemented into the expansion. We know it's super fun. Personally, I'm still of the opinion that the power rewards that Torghast yields, the materials for making your various legendary items and the lost souls for progressing your covenant, should have a reasonably achievable hard cap, but a player's entries into Torghast per week should be unlimited and as simple as walking inside with no currency cost. I think that by having a horrific visions or mage tower style thing where you're farming a currency to pay at the door every time you want to make a Tower of the Damned run is going to be massively anti what makes Torghast so fun. Because as I've said before, I would be loath to lose any of that stupid randomness from Torghast. At the moment, potentially having stinking luck in the layout that you get or in some lame-o anima abilities that you pick up are all part of the rich tapestry of awesomeness for Torghast and genuinely contribute to part of the fun. And that randomness suddenly wouldn't be so fun if, say, you had to spend an hour farming a currency to even get in there, in which case you would definitely be within your rights to be a little bit annoyed with the tower if its RNG gave you an especially hard run. I don't want to limit people's entries into the tower in any way, and I think it seems that broadly the community agrees with me there, with Ian hinting in his most recent interview on Zoltan's channel that this is the direction they are hoping to take, which is awesome, good. But then something happened this week which didn't change my mind on this, but maybe refined it a little bit. Because I've also said the words before now on this channel, it doesn't matter if Torghast isn't fair. It doesn't matter if Torghast isn't balanced. And I still probably think that. I think the stupid OP nature of the anima powers and how many there are is a major part of the fun so far. But then of course, this week, we were able to take Shaman into the tower on Alpha. And as you have no doubt heard, Shaman are broken in Torghast, fam. Like, they are really broken in there. And how do I know that Shaman are broken in Torghast? Well, because I can quite easily bop all the way to the current cap of floor 72 on Heroic without much difficulty and pretty consistently. And that is not something I have been able to do so easily on other classes, or indeed any class at all. Okay, look, this is the first time I've ever got to the 72nd floor, and that's how I know it's broken, okay? Because someone as impatient as me shouldn't be able to do that, alright? It's broken. But it does definitely highlight some problems with Torghast that we need to decide, A, if they actually are problems or not, and B, how to fix them if they are. First up, there's just the fact that as a solo class in Torghast, Shaman are already much better equipped than most other players. Thanks to unpruning, their DPS specs now have a whole ton of healing spells at their disposal, a huge amount of crowd control, and with our old friend the Earth Elemental, even a handy tank when it's needed. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with this. Remember Withered training in Legion and how it was just much easier as a tank? And when asked about that imbalance at BlizzCon, Ian said words to the effect of, hey, instead of complaining that it's easier as a tank, why can't it be cool thing about being a tank that Withered Army training is so much easier? And Ian got a lot of flack for that at the time, but I get it, honest. I'm cool with certain classes or specs being just flat out better at certain types of content than others, especially content which should have its rewards hard capped at a level that anyone can achieve pretty easily. As long as every class can do Torghast, as in, as long as there's no class which is flat out shit at Torghast, it doesn't matter if there are some classes that are really good at it. But then there's the anima powers, which are the real game breaker here, because the Shaman ones are, well, they are stupid and broken, as you may have heard. There's the famous Draining Hex, which drains a target's health by 2% every second while it is hexed. So if you have the time, you can just hex an enemy, and then you can just stand around to kill any mob that you encounter in under a minute, and which, like most abilities, that stacks, so before long, you're killing them in much less time than that. This ability is basically a cheat code for Torghast that lets you get past anything that is put up against you. Then there's my personal favourite, Energetic Totems, which increases your damage and healing for 40% for each active totem that you have, which means if you select the Totem Mastery talent, which drops 4 almost permanent totems around you, you instantly have a 200% DPS boost straight off the bat. If this is one of the first anima abilities that you get, it's usually one of the ones that you continue to get. And it's not unusual that you are on a standard 600% damage a couple of floors in, which again, is a basic cheat code. But the Shaman fun doesn't stop there. Totemic Warrior grants you and your party 5 seconds of Bloodlust every time you drop a totem, which can obviously stack up to 10 and then 15 seconds, and which, as you can imagine, goes very nicely with Totemic Calling, which drops a second random totem every time you drop a totem, so that you get double the totems and double the Bloodlust. And I don't know, maybe you've got some Ancestral Fury, which increases your Bloodlust haste, and suddenly you've got 600% damage and permanent Bloodlust, which is better than normal Bloodlust. And if you really get in trouble, you can just hex the baddie and sit there until it dies. It doesn't take many stacks of Earthen Protector to make Earth Elemental's cooldown short enough so that it can constantly be up. And I don't know, maybe you'll have the cool ability that gives him an Earthquake around him. Why not? I have got multiple of all of these abilities on multiple runs, which meant that after 6, 7, 8 floors, I was such an indestructible death-dealing super god that all I really cared about was getting speed increases for my next anima powers, just so that I could get through the floors quicker. So yeah, it's broken, sure. Is it fun? Yes, of course it's fun. How could that not be fun? Did you not hear when I told you about the constant Bloodlust? That shit is awesome, and it's alpha, so the whole cheat code thing is relative, because at the moment the enemies in there clearly don't scale properly, getting more powerful at a much slower rate than your character does as they pick up powers. So if you can get through the first, admittedly sometimes horrendous 4 floors or so due to awesome baller skill, or much more likely a nice floor layout with some easy mobs and good anima drops, then it just gets easier and easier as you go on, which is obviously the opposite of what it's supposed to be, right? The mobs should scale faster than your character so that eventually they get too hard, because otherwise every Torghast run will go on forever, and that is not good game design. So we need to recognize that powers that feel massively OP, or like cheat codes right now, often feel that way, in part at least, because they are being used against underpowered enemies that aren't getting stronger like they should. And really, until Blizzard address that in the alpha, we still don't actually know what a real Torghast run feels like. But here's the problem that I became aware of playing Shaman this week. It doesn't matter if Shaman is just flat out better at Torghast than any other class. It doesn't matter if anima abilities are stupid overpowered right now or unbalanced across the classes. What can spoil your fun a bit is when there are 1 or 2 abilities within a class which are clearly head and shoulders above any other. And that is what's really apparent in Shaman. Basically, if your first anima power is Energetic Totems or Draining Hex, that goes a long way to negating nearly all of that initial challenge of the early horrendous first floors of Torghast. To the extent where, honestly, why would you even bother with a run if you got anything else? And knowing this, I started to do something that I've never done in any game, and that I thought I wouldn't do in WoW and Torghast. When I loaded into the lobby and I got my first anima power, if it wasn't energetic totems, then I would turn around, walk back out, and reload until it was that particular anima power. And that is so unlike me, okay, because I am not a min-max kind of guy. I have never once in my life given up a greater rift in Diablo 3 if the conditions weren't optimal when I got there. I am not a save scum sort of guy when I play RPGs. That's just not me. Here I am, sitting here telling you that part of the fun about Torghast is the randomness and the basic unfairness of the layout and enemy placement and ability drops, and yet, faced with a power that is clearly better than all the others and given unlimited opportunities to enter the tower and leave as much as I like and come back again, here I was happily giving up on a game before it even started if I didn't get that cool totem thing I wanted. And you might be sitting there, or standing there if you have a standing desk, and if you do, nice one, I keep meaning to get one of those, thinking, yeah, Taliesin, you might do that, but I would never do that. I just want to have fun, bro. But honestly, listen to me. I would have said the same thing too, because this is the way the psychology works. It's not that you're trying to get energetic totems because you know it makes it so much easier. It's that you know if you get anything apart from energetic totems, you're making it so much harder for yourself, and no one wants to do that. Just as how if we were DPS in Withered Army training, we didn't think, oh, tanks have it easier, we thought, we have it harder. And suddenly I can kind of see Paul Cubitt's point in his interview with Towley, where he said he wasn't sure about unlimited entries into Torghast because it might turn out to be all that we do. And we were all like, screw you, Paul, I want it to be all I do. I love that shit. Hands off our Torghast with your fun detector and eradicator, which you have because you work for Blizzard. Because he was kind of right. I spend loads of time in Torghast, but as a shaman, half of that isn't actually playing, but resetting Torghast until I have the start that I know will allow me to progress the furthest. And that's not actually very fun, you know? I don't want that to be part of my live Torghast experience. I don't want to spend a large part of my game session doing that, and I don't want to watch streams of people walking in and out of Torghast till they get their favourite ability early on either, or nope out when they have some tricky mobs right at the start. The fun should come from meeting those challenges head on, and there is a way that unlimited entries into the tower works against that fun. It's almost like a professional game dev with years of experience working on my favourite game had foreseen a problem that I hadn't, but I refuse to accept that could be possible. But let me clarify, I still want unlimited entries into Torghast with hard-capped power rewards. I still think that's the best approach. So the question now becomes, how do we then avoid the reset problem? Because that's not something we want to encourage. It's not fun. An obvious answer would be to just balance the powers a bit better so that there aren't one or two that are so much better than the other powers that they make your playthrough so much easier and that you're willing to reset if you don't get them. Basically, make energetic totems or draining hex less good. But it's because they're so good that makes them so fun. And then, of course, I'm wrong when I said that it doesn't matter if powers are unbalanced, because clearly it does matter in this particular way. And then I thought, well, maybe a time or inconvenience penalty you could introduce. What if when you leave the tower, instead of respawning right outside the door, ready to go back in again, there's a respawn point the other side of the moor, a substantial walk away? Could the promise of that inconvenience nudge us into not bailing on a suboptimal start to a run? For many players, yeah, absolutely. But for serious high-level Torghast players, probably not. And in the same way that those players ran hundreds of island expeditions per day in BFA, so you know they would make that boring walk through the moor again and again to re-enter Torghast and get the best abilities early on. And they are not going to enjoy that, and that unenjoyment is going to make them push for less randomness in the Torghast layout, and we will lose one of the most important parts of the fun of Torghast. I guess what I'm saying is, so I don't know the answer, and I guess what I'm saying is, my views on how this game mode should be implemented into WoW haven't changed. Unlimited entries, hard cap weekly rewards. But playing with the Elemental Shaman in all its broken, wonderful OP glory has made me much more sympathetic to some of the criticisms of how I think Torghast should work. Basically, I suppose it's opened my mind a little bit to the debate. So I guess now is probably the time to tell me why I'm wrong about all of it. So go wild. I love it when you do that. And thank you for joining us today. If you somehow enjoyed this episode, which I'm going to go ahead and apologize for again right right now. Sorry for this episode, it won't happen again. Don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen. Guys, seriously, thank you. You really are the best. We're going to put the script of the full Disappeared Weekly Reset up there for you to peruse if you like. If you didn't like it, fair enough, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Control Z. No, my name is Taliesin, from me and Evie and Anirin too. Cheerio.